Hello everyone, my name is Hanfei Dong from Hanyang University in Korea and my advisor is Professor Simon Song. So in this presentation, I will talk about non-intrusive flow and pressure field analysis in compressor mufflers using magnetic resonance velocimetry and integrated pressure estimation. So first, let's see our research background. Most compressor mufflers are designed primarily with acoustic performance, often neglecting their influence on flow performance, so which leads to reduced energy efficiency. Therefore, visualizing internal flow and pressure distribution is important for designing high-performance mufflers that balance the noise separation with minimal flow resistance. However, the conventional methods for this analysis have significant limitations. For example, validating run CFD simulations with only inlet and outlet experimental pressure data is insufficient to capture complex 3D flow structures, while optical methods like PIV are impractical due to the muffler's complex and opaque internal geometries. So our objective is to measure and analyze the 3D velocity and decay fields into mass-produced suction muffler models using MRV and apply the omnidirectional integration method to the MRV-derived data to estimate the pressure drop of each model. So first, I will give you a brief introduction to MRV. MRV is a flow visualization technique that uses a conventional MRI scanner. It measures in a 3D region and is non-invasive technology that doesn't require tracing particles. And because MRV uses magnetic field signals for measurement, it's suitable for complex and opaque flow environments. And MRV can measure a wide range of characteristics, including velocity, decay, temperature, and two-phase flow. And it was primarily used in the medical field. Currently, it is also widely used in various engineering flow fields, such as the flow inside the refrigerator. All right, on this slide, I will introduce a configuration of our MRV text section and flow conditions. First, I want to clarify our analysis focused on the section muffler. The remaining regions were excluded. And the MRV text section was developed based on the CAD model provided by LG Electronics, which consisted of four main components: the compressor shell, a suction muffler upper part, and a flat mounting plate. And a flow conditioner was installed in the inlet duct to ensure uniform inlet flow. And the working fluid enters through the compressor shell's inlet duct, passing through the suction muffler, and finally exits through the outlet on the flat plate, simulating the actual flow path of the compressor. And to ensure dynamic similarity, we match the Reynolds number of a typical operating condition at 23 RPS. So as you can see in this table, the actual system with gaseous refrigerant operates at a Reynolds number of 15,900. So to replicate this condition in our two-scaled MRV model using water, achieving this same Reynolds number required a flow condition like follows. Okay, let's see the internal configurations of the two muffler models. This slide shows the fluid domains for Model 1 on the left and Model 2 on the right. So first, let's trace the flow path in Model 1. As you can see, the flow descends through an oblique channel, passes through a convergence region, and finally rises through a vertical channel to the outlet. Now, if you look at Model 2, here the fluid is directly horizontally from the inlet, then through an oblique channel, and finally moves outwards through the vertical outlet channel. Okay. And next, I will briefly explain our experimental setup. The MRV experiments were conducted using a 3D human MRI at Korea Basic Science Institute Wuchang campus. So as you can see in this figure, we have closed loop circuit, including a pump, a flow meter, a reservoir, and flow control and data acquisition instruments. To maintain the working fluid at a steady temperature of 20 degrees, we used a refrigerated heating circulator and a thermocouple. And the Cooper sulfate aqueous solution was used to enhance the signal-to-noise ratio and reduce noise. And regarding the scan parameters, we set the isotropic spatial resolution to 0.5 millimeters for the velocity scan and 1 millimeters for the TK scan. Now let's move on the flow visualization results. Okay, let's now visualize the group of flow characteristics within the two models using 3D streamlines and isosurfaces. And first, let's see the streamlines of the model 1 on the left. As the flow enters the threshold gap between the inlet duct and the muffler induces significant secondary flows. Then, as the main flow exits the inclined passage, it impacts on the lower wall. This redirection forms a large recirculation region that occupies the lower left section of the cavity. And this large-scale recirculation is the dominant flow feature that characterizes Model 1. And the isosurfaces on the left provides another perspective on the flow structure. The surface of 1.2 shows the high speed near the inlet, while the other surfaces visualize the primary flow path as it develops through the muffler. And let's turn to the Model 2 on the right. So first, looking at the streamlines at the inlet, Model 2 shows strong secondary flow comparable to Model 1. However, the dominant feature of Model 2 occurs in the inclined upward passage. The velocity contours here clearly show the flow shifting to one side, which indicates the flow separation and is expected to cause strong TK gradients. And finally, the isosurfaces show both the high velocity regions at the inlet and the primary flow path. Now, let's see the TK isosurface results. For both models, high TK is observed near the inlet and at the final 90-degree band near the outlet. For Model 1, a large TK region is formed in the lower left cavity, which is driven by the large-scale recirculation we identified earlier. And in contrast, Model 2 has three other distinct high TK regions. These are located at passage entrance, caused by due to the backflow, and within the inclined passage caused by flow separation, and at the final 90-degree band and final band. Okay, and the figure on the right shows a quantitative comparison of the number of voxels across different TK ranges for both models. Across most TK ranges, Model 2 shows fewer voxels than Model 1, indicating reduced turbulence intensity. However, in the highest TK range, Model 2 contains more voxels, reflecting localized strong turbulence. Okay. Okay, to obtain deeper insight into the localized flow behavior with Model 1, we selected four representative plans. And plan 1 is located just after the inlet, and plan 2 cuts horizontally across the main chamber, and plan 3 provides a vertical cross-section of the upward channel, and plan 4 is positioned just upstream of the outlet. So these plans allows us to analyze the complex flow structures we identified earlier in the 3D streamlines, such as the large-scale section flow in plan 2, and in plan 4, we can see the distinct crescent-shaped high-velocity structure at the outlet. Okay, now let's see the four representative plans within Model 2. So plan 1 is located just after the inlet, and plan 2 is here, and plan 3 and plan 4. So these plans allow us to analyze the complex flow structures like the flow separations, so in the inclined passage, right? So, all right, now that we have the velocity and the TK fields, we can address our primary objective, estimating the internal pressure distribution of each muffler. The pressure drop across a muffler directly impacts its flow resistance and the overall energy efficiency of the compressor. So to estimate the pressure field from our MRV data, we used omnidirectional integration method. The basic principle of the ODI method is to reconstruct the pressure field by integrating the momentum equation along all paths that passes through our domain. And the final pressure at each voxel is then determined by averaging the results from all these different passes. This slide shows a process using a simplified example with only 58 points. The main steps are first, distributing uniform seeds on a bounding sphere, and second, interconnecting all seeds to create passes, and third, trimming those passes to keep only the ones that passes through our model. So, however, in our actual computation, we used 2,600 seed points to ensure sufficient directional coverage. This resulted in a high density of valid integration passes for each voxel, with a minimum of over 40 and an average of 118 for both models. This large number of passes is what ensures a robust and reliable pressure estimation. Okay. So to reconstruct the pressure fields, we use two different approaches. First is zero Reynolds stress approach, a method commonly used in previous studies. This approach considers only inertial and viscous term in the momentum equation while neglecting the turbulence effect. The second is the isotropic turbulence approach. In this method, we incorporated the turbulence effects by using our MRV measure TK field. This ensures an isotropic turbulence assumption where we include the contribution from the isotropic part of the Reynolds stress tensor, and finally add a TK gradient term that you see in the final equation. Okay, let's look at the result. A key point for this analysis is that for all cases, the pressure is referenced to the same point as the inlet, which is set to 0. Therefore, the average pressure shown at the outlet plane directly represents the total pressure drop across each muffler, right? So for model 1, including turbulence effects, only increased the estimate pressure drop by about 2%, and in contrast for model 2, the increase was much more significant and 14%. This large impact is due to the strong TK gradients in model 2. And so using the more accurate isotropic turbulence approach, we can make our final comparison with a pressure drop of minus 19.9 kilopascal for model 1 and minus 13.6 kilopascal for model 2. This indicates that model 2 has a 31.7% lower pressure drop than model 1. So these results suggest that when acoustic performance is not a design constraint, model 2 offers lower flow resistance and would therefore lead to high energy efficiency in the compressor. All right, to conclude my presentation, first we use MRV successfully review the complex 3D flow and TK fields into mass-produced compressor suction mufflers. And then we apply the ODM method to the MRV-derived velocity and TK data using the both approaches to estimate pressure. And finally, putting this all together, our study shows that integration of MRV and ODM method establish a powerful, non-intrusive framework for resolving both velocity and pressure fields in complex internal flow. So this is the end of my presentation. Thank you for your attention.